Iris meets with a restaurant manager for a job to help with her financial situation at home. She is seemingly too good for the job, but the manager informs her that she is in consideration. She remains polite and present, eventually taking her leave. Afterward, Iris is at home, going through some bills and making some calculations. Her brother Rayleigh is standing by the window, possibly hungry, so Iris offers to make him something to eat. Slightly irritated, he declines her offer, being able to manage that much himself. She then describes her plans for the day, possibly meeting Dr. Barton, supposedly capable of helping them cut costs at their house, or alleviating some of their financial burdens. She makes her way to the clinic, ushering in an older woman in a wheelchair before her. She walks into the doctor's room and immediately meets a well-dressed man by the name of Sheffard Lambrick. Everyone in the room is aware of Iris's situation, and Dr. Barton discusses Lambrick's foundation and how they are responsible for improving living situations for many before her. Iris is hesitant at first, but she lets Lambrick continue. Lambrick offers to help her in this situation, offering financial compensation. Lambrick adds to this by mentioning the conditions for his aid. Iris is to attend a dinner at his place of residence later that night to play a game. In the presence of other guests in a similar situation to Iris, the dinner involves a game where the winner receives a hefty compensation. Providing no further details, Lambrick pushes the offer onto Iris, who doubts the legitimacy of the situation. With Iris's natural reaction to such an opportunity showing itself, Dr. Barton reveals himself to be a past winner of the game, assuring her that Lambrick is a man of his word. Iris thinks about her brother, in desperate need of a donor to treat his leukemia, willing to take the risk. But aware that the situation is too good to be true, she asks for some time to consider this option and takes her leave. Back home, the two siblings share some laughs, with Rayleigh mocking Iris's French while she plays along to enjoy her time with her brother. Iris's cell phone rings. With the restaurant she applied for updating her on her job application. Iris hears them out and finds out that they are rejecting her. Meanwhile, her brother is listening in on the conversation, able to deduce that she is desperately trying to get a job. Iris sits on her bed and reminisces about her brother in the past. The two were in the car some time earlier, and Iris seems disappointed about not being a viable donor for her brother's treatment. Her brother hits her with a reality check, having accepted his fate, and asking her to maybe accept it too. Being the loving sister, Iris refuses to do so, finding herself in her current, difficult situation. Iris makes her choice, fishing out Lambrick's card from the dirty laundry, ready to risk herself as a last resort. She goes to Rayleigh's room, where he is playing on his portable console. She lets him know about her plans for the evening, and he responds by encouraging her and assuring her that he will take his medicine. A fancy black car, driven by a chauffeur, comes to their house to pick Iris up. She falls asleep on the way there, dreaming about an interaction with her brother. She shows her undying commitment to saving her brother right until she wakes up in front of Lambrick's house. Lambrick's staff usher Iris into a lavish mansion. One of his butlers brings her into a room where all the other guests are waiting to meet with Lambrick and eat dinner. She introduces herself to Lucas and Cal, who then begin introducing the others. Peter is a gambling man, known for his gambling endeavors in Vegas. The lady in the wheelchair, Linda, is the same woman who Iris ushered into Dr. Barton's clinic before. Travis is standing at the corner, an ex-veteran minding his own business. The other girl standing across the room is Amy. Conway, the oldest man in the room, is known among the other guests as a bit skeptical about their current situation. The three then share a toast to the Lambrick Foundation, their savior. Back at his house, the doctor goes over some documents, reminiscing about his conversation with Lambrick. Lambrick convinced Dr. Barton to invite Iris to the dinner, even though Dr. Barton protested her participation. He believes that she is not the right person for the game, so it seems he decided upon taking action to reverse his mistake. Back at the Lambricks, Julian is talking with his father about the dinner. Lambrick mentions the significance of the integrity of the game, asking Julian to keep minimal involvement throughout. Julian expresses his disinterest, and Lambrick approaches him about a mistake made by Julian in the game last year. Back in the guest room, the butler asks all the guests to leave their possessions before they enter and play the game. With the players becoming more suspicious, they understand their situation and agree. The butler then takes them to the dining room. The dinner room comprises a long table, with cutlery laid out for everyone. The players take their seats as the Lambricks arrive. The hosts apologize for keeping the guests waiting, and take time to introduce the important members of their household. The butler, Bevans, explains the menu for the night, essentially steak with wine. Seeing her plate, Iris raises her hand to inform Lambrick that she is a vegetarian, unable to eat the expensive meal in front of her. Lambrick, apologetically, cannot accommodate her in this situation, so Iris politely retracts her statement and decides to just eat her potato side. Lambrick decides to turn this current dilemma into a game, offering her money in exchange for breaking free from her principle against consuming meat. Iris is reluctant at first, but Lambrick places a large sum of money on the table in exchange for her to finish her steak. Dumbfounded, she starts to dig into her food. Lambrick laughs at the situation, expressing his discomforting joy from the situation. Being able to pay someone into abandoning their lifetime commitment is an entertaining matter for him. Afterward, he notices Conway is not drinking any of the expensive wine on the table. He realizes Conway is a recovering alcoholic, and decides to tease him about his situation as well. Eventually, Conway opens up about his journey to sobriety, but Lambert believes that alcoholism was never his problem, hence warranting Conway's presence at the table this fateful night. Lambert deduces that alcoholism led to Conway's downfall, and in the irony of the situation, he offers to make alcohol the solution, placing $10,000 in front of the older gentleman, offering him the money if he drinks the wine. However, Conway resists, until Lambert increases the sum to $50,000 and places expensive scotch for the recovering alcohol to indulge in. After much reluctance, Conway can no longer resist and lets his need for money outweigh his principle. With everyone finishing their dinners, Lambert begins to introduce the game. The game is not a test of mental or physical capabilities. Rather, it is a familiar game for all the guests. Would you rather? Would you rather gives a dilemma, with only two alternatives for the player to choose from. Explaining further, he provides an example where Travis is given a choice between kissing Iris or Peter. In the game, Travis must make his choice, and Lambert expands on this example by mentioning that there is no option but to commit to the choice made. The grounds for remaining in the game involve being capable of progressing further through the rounds, a rule Lambert does not explain explicitly. Iris asks about a hypothetical where the player makes no choice. In this game, such a situation warrants the elimination of a player, where the specifics of elimination are also not clear to the members at the table. Lastly, a timer will make sure that players make their choice within a time limit, starting at 15 seconds. Any time taken beyond that is another situation warranting elimination. Cal asks Lambert why everyone needs to play such a game, when the Lambert Foundation is clearly able to alleviate every guest at the table from their financial burdens. Lambert elaborates that the game is for allowing the players to test their decision-making, essentially yielding a winner who proves that they can commit to their choices. With nothing more left to explain, Lambert offers the players one last chance to leave the table. Conway gets up and grabs onto his $50,000, but immediately sits back down, clearly drunk now. As no other player leaves their seat, the game commences. The butlers enter the room, led by Bevins. Lambert introduces him as a former military agent, alongside an electrocution machine that he is all too familiar with. Conway, at the sight of this machine, tries to leave, losing his calm completely and walking towards the door. Lambert reminds him that the option to leave is no longer on the table, but in his drunken mania, Conway throws a tantrum and makes his way toward Lambert. Before reaching him, however, Bevins shoots Conway down, horrifying all the guests in the room. The hosts remain calm and proceed with the game, but Linda also mentions her desire to leave. Lambert explains that the guest now lying on the floor serves as a perfect demonstration as to where such a desire will now leave the players. The timer is set, and Cal is the first victim of the game. Lambert asks him to choose between electrocuting himself or electrocuting Amy, giving the man 15 seconds before elimination. Cal holds two buttons in his hand. One electrocutes himself and the other electrocutes her. Taking his time, the clock runs down, and Cal's good nature leaves him as a victim of electrocution. The next player is Amy, who has to go through the same process as Cal, with her and Linda being the two choices. With no hesitation, Amy electrocutes Linda, leaving her disoriented, until the butlers force her back into consciousness. Linda asks to be left out of this game, but her protest is fruitless. With the game moving on to Linda, Peter also falls victim to the same choice. This time, Linda has to make the choice, and Peter tries to leave like Conway. Bevan forces him back down to his seat, and Linda makes the choice to electrocute Peter. Meanwhile, Dr. Barden pulls out a revolver from his drawers, getting ready to leave. He enters his car and pulls out the driver, probably leaving for Lambert's estate. Between Lucas and Travis, Lucas finds himself falling victim to the electrocution. Now the turn moves on to Lucas, with his alternative option being electrocuting Iris. He decides to electrocute himself again, to the amusement of Amy and Lambert. Disoriented, the butlers help Lucas up, but he falls back down on the table. Moving on to Iris. Her choice is between electrocuting herself or electrocuting Cal for a second time. Reflecting on her personality, she electrocutes herself, and the round ends with no eliminations. Lambert leaves the room to make preparations for the next round. Meanwhile, Dr. Barden is driving down the highway, accelerating as a reflection of his urgency. Back in the dining room, the players are conspiring to possibly escape, but they realize that all the personnel in the estate have firearms, making their chances very slim. Julian enters the room, mocking the people at the table and calling them pigs. During the interaction, Travis loses his cool and bursts out in anger at Julian. Julian singles out Travis and warns him that his choice to make a stand against Julian is going to be his downfall. Julian, as he leaves the room, orders the butlers to cover the areas behind the players in plastic, further causing distress among the guests sitting at the table. Dr. Barden finally reaches his destination. In the darkness of the night sky, he parks his car and leaves, equipping his firearm as well. Now the dining room has plastic covering the areas behind the players. Lambert is back in the room and makes a sarcastic offer for the players to use the restroom. Lambert introduces the next round, offering 30 seconds for the players to now make the choice, starting with Iris. Her choice is between stabbing Lucas with an ice pick or striking Travis 3 times with an African whipping staff. With an ice pick having the potential to cause a fatal wound, Travis offers himself up for this task of endurance, taking off his coat and getting ready to take his beating. Iris is shown how to use the whip and left on her own to torture poor Travis. Sobbing, her first strike barely makes a sound, warranting Lambert to interject and demand that Iris whip Travis properly. Iris starts with one slash, clearly causing a reaction from everyone in the room. With each whip, the players all try to look away from the horror of the situation. His punishment is over. Travis is in pain, now with blood also covering the back of his shirt. The next player for this round is Lucas, who must either stab Iris or slash Travis again. The mortality of a stab wound pushes Lucas to slash Travis again, who endures the pain and takes 3 slashes again. Travis is the next person to make a choice. His choices are stabbing Lucas or Bevins whipping Travis again. Now breaking down, Travis throws a tantrum, shouting at Julian especially, but regains his cool, only to choose to endure 3 more whips. Lucas tries to stop Travis, offering to let Travis stab him, but Travis does not want to stab anyone. His first choice becoming absolute, Travis must, and does, take his beating again. During this horrific round, Dr. Barden is outside, maneuvering through the garden and making his way to the mansion with his firearm. The next player is Peter, who must choose between either stabbing Linda or whipping Travis 3 times. Peter gives it some thought and decides to stab Linda, her paralysis making the stab possibly painless. Peter stabs her and accidentally goes through an artery, causing her to bleed profusely. Realizing his mistake, he pulls out his belt to help reduce the bleeding by tying it around her leg. Linda's turn is next, and she must either whip Travis or stab Amy. Still disoriented, Linda takes time to collect herself, but immediately stabs Amy. In response, Amy lashes out in anger and smacks Linda, even catching Lambert off guard. This shows everyone how Amy is only playing for herself, with no regard for the safety of all the other players in the room. Amy is the next player in the round, and after observing her actions prior, Lambert offers that she either whips Travis 3 times or stabs anyone in the room. This choice differs from everyone else in the room, as Amy is trying to win while the others are trying to survive. Amy, enjoying her freedom to hurt anyone, stands up and walks over to Iris. Iris fearfully looks back at Amy, begging for mercy. She shows no remorse and, at Lambert's discretion, stabs Iris in the torso. The stab wound is seemingly painful, but the other players inspect it to find that it is not fatal. Simultaneously, Travis falls down to the ground, now completely unconscious. Dr. Barden, meanwhile, creeps his way around the house until he makes his way to a hatch. He approaches the hatch and gets ready to enter. The hatch leads into a boiler room, where Dr. Barden equips his revolver again and walks gently across the room. Travis is completely unconscious on the ground, and Linda is unresponsive in her wheelchair. Bevins inspects Linda to find that she is no longer alive, so she is taken out of the room. Cal is the last player in the round, now having to choose between whipping Travis again or stabbing Lucas. Lucas offers himself up again, but Cal seems to be aligning with Amy's perspective on how to approach the game. He makes his choice, and Travis receives 3 more strikes across his back. The staff now remove Travis from the room, clearly unable to play and possibly unconscious. Meanwhile, Lambert and Bevins discuss something in privacy. Simultaneously, the players all decide to take action, everyone collectively disabling the guards. Lucas helps Iris get away, but a guard latches onto her. However, Iris has the ice pick still with her, so she stabs the guard and runs out. Cal grabs onto the whip and makes his way towards Lambert, able to get near enough for the cynic host to immediately shoot him down. Now with his firearm in plain sight, all the players seat themselves again. Lambert notices Iris's absence and asks the personnel to go look for her. Julian and some of the other butlers run out of the room in pursuit. Iris traverses through the house, walking through different rooms and avoiding the people after her. She makes her way to the basement, losing the search party behind her. Julian spots Iris trying to make her way out of the same hatch that Dr. Barden entered through, subduing her and pushing her onto the ground. Dr. Barden is also traversing through the house, until he hears Iris screaming from the basement. Bevins also hears the sounds of struggle from the basement. Julian tries to assault her, but she subdues him, stabbing him in the process. Dr. Barden appears before them, with his gun pointing at Julian. Suddenly, the doctor is shot down and Bevins shows himself to Iris. Desperate for revenge, Julian demands that Bevins shoot Iris as well, but Bevins remains calm and approaches Iris slowly. He ignores the struggling man on the ground and asks that Iris follow him back to the dining room. The two enter the dreadful dining room, where Bevins informs Lambert of the incident in the basement. The cynic host takes a short leave from the dining room to see his son, demanding the doors are properly shut behind him. The leftover players talk about their current situation, also informing Iris that there are only 4 players left, with the passing of Cal. Lambert re-enters the room, making his way towards Iris before anything else. The cynic host shows a side of himself that no one expects, offering his apologies to Iris. Julian had lost his mother in the past, causing the young man to lose control over his own actions. After opening up about himself, Lambert recommences the game. Lambert introduces the next round, while his butler brings in a barrel of water. The contestants stare at the barrel, thinking of what horrors await them now. The premise of the round is a choice between the known and the unknown, where the players have to either stay underwater for 2 minutes, or choose an envelope that could have an even more severe punishment. The barrel represents a known punishment, while the envelope is a risk that could be less or more severe than possibly drowning. The first player for this round is Peter. As a gambling man, he explains the thought process behind a man who evaluates his risks. He shows that he is very confident at first, but that slowly dwindles away. With the clock ticking down, he decides to choose the unknown. The envelope states that Peter has to hold onto an exploding firecracker, seemingly harmless. Relieved, Peter assumes he is safe from a fatal injury, only to be let down by what appears to be a sizable stick of dynamite. Now in protest, the gambler fears for himself, as such an explosive is possibly more fatal than 2 minutes underwater. Eventually, Peter gets up from his seat and Bevins tapes the firecracker to his hand. Peter reluctantly lights the fuse, praying for the explosive in his hand to be a dud. The fuse extinguishes for a moment, only for an explosion to follow after a short pause. Peter's hand explodes, startling him into a heart attack. The other players watch in horror as the gambling man loses his life to his own heart. The next player is Lucas, who chooses the envelope. The envelope states that Lucas must slit his eye open, and, to aid the process, he is provided with a mirror and razor. Lucas immediately breaks down, incapable of slitting his own eye open. Lambert underplays the situation, offering him 30 seconds for the endeavor and freedom of choice on which eye to slit open. Lucas makes his first attempt, grabbing onto the mirror and, with a gun against the back of his head, tries to slit his own eye open. Unable to do so at first, he begins breaking down completely. As the clock runs out, Lucas finally makes his choice, immediately slashing his eye and ending his turn. Iris's turn follows, where she makes the choice to undergo 2 minutes inside the barrel. Bevins forces her under the water, while Lambert sips on his tea. Meanwhile, Iris is reminiscing about a dream her brother has, where she is drowning. Even in this situation, her only thought is about her brother. Eventually, she begins to struggle until 2 minutes pass and Bevins lets her go. She collects herself and makes her way back to the chair. Lambert then discloses that she chose the right option, since her envelope would have required her to lose all her teeth. Amy is the last player in the round, and while she chooses between the barrel or the envelope, Lambert brings up Amy's ex-husband and child. Clearly disturbed by their mention, she chooses the envelope, which requires her to stay underwater for 4 minutes. Among all the players, she accepts her fate with the least amount of hesitation, so she moves toward the barrel. However, Bevins forces her into the barrel before she can prepare herself, as the clock has already begun ticking down. She immediately begins to struggle, but Bevins keeps her in the barrel. Despite her struggles, she eventually succumbs to the water. The butler lets go of her, revealing that Amy is no longer able to play. The last round immediately follows, with Lambert asking Iris to sit across from Lucas. Before officially beginning, the host thanks the two for their participation and expresses his satisfaction with either being the potential winner. Alas, the final round commences, and to choose the person that goes first, Bevins flips a coin. According to the coin, Iris wins, so Lambert offers her 2 choices. She can end the game, with both players leaving. For the next choice, the butlers give Iris a gun, and Lambert says that she wins if she shoots Lucas. Taking her time, Lucas points out that she needs to let the 2 of them go alive. Fearing for his safety, he begins to open up about why he is at this dinner party. Right in the middle of his sob story, Iris shoots, leaving her as the last player standing. The hosts are clapping for her, as she starts crying uncontrollably. Lambert gives Iris everything she needs, including money and a donor for her brother's surgery. She is taken home in a car with her winnings. She reaches home in the morning to find her younger brother sleeping. She inspects her wound from one of the rounds in the game, and showers afterward. During all this, her brother is still asleep, so she makes her way to his room to check up on him. She walks over to her brother and turns him over to find that he is completely unresponsive. He lies there, lifeless and pale, with an empty bottle of prescription next to him. For the sake of his sister's future, Rayleigh left her with one less burden to worry about.